stimulus ideas is just a remarkable sea change in the Democratic Party, which I think is attributed to kind of my three characters and really isn't appreciated by a lot of the kind of doomerist left that is unhappy that, Bernie Sanders isn't president. My message in the book is like, look at all that they have achieved through Biden. And I think there's really a lot of reason for optimism and a lot of reason to believe that if the economic numbers and public sentiment numbers keep going in the direction that they are, that Biden will have a good chance at winning a second term.
So, yeah, it's interesting because something that you talk about in the book and something that I think a lot of people don't thoroughly realize even to this point is that many Bernie voters ended up voting for Donald Trump in 2016. I know that was the case with my own mom. And,
absolutely.
And I'm wondering then again, circling back to why the Democrats made the choice that they did to nominate Joe Biden in 2020. If that was the case, and yeah, he won by 44,000 votes in all the right places, whether it's possible that number might have been even larger if Bernie Sanders in 2020 had been the nominee, and why did that argument not succeed, and the argument to stay safe and stayed and MBNA corporate won out? Like how did that battle take place?
I think there are two reasons. Number one, I mean, of course, we can't know for certain what would have happened if Bernie were the nominee. Wow, what a fascinating race that would have been, though, right? Yeah. The left populist versus the right populist. I think that a lot of voters just decided that, look, Bernie Sanders, he's somebody, he calls himself a socialist, and it's too much. As much as we like the guy, we just can't risk that other people will decide he's a radical and vote Trump instead or not show up at the polls. The thing I encounter again and getting on a campaign trail is it's not, people are like, well, look, they'll tell me I would vote for Bernie, but I'm worried that, my neighbors will see him too radical and vote for Trump. And so, that's why I'm supporting Joe Biden.
Interesting. Yeah, so let's take a step back if we could. I want to talk about the third figure you address in your book, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she came to prominence, in 2018, 2019, and she seemed to just kind of come out of nowhere because she was elected and managed to primary what seemed to be a pretty safe centrist district in New York City. What happened there?
Well, I mean, what's so fascinating about her as a character is that, in a lot of ways, and this is the way I write about her, I tell her story in The Rebels, is that, like, she herself is a product of the great financial crisis, right? She just graduated from college. Her family came back home, working class. Her father died. Her family almost lost their home. Weren't getting any help from the government, worked a series of kind of dead-end bartending service industry jobs. I mean, everything about her kind of personally, generationally, was kind of representative of the harm that the financial crisis, inflicted on middle-class and working-class Americans, and also on the fact that the Democratic administration at the time didn't do enough to create, a broad and satisfying recovery for people like Ocasio-Cortez. And so she was one of the people pulled into electoral politics by Bernie Sanders, became very active on his campaign, fully fluent in a lot of these issues, certainly environmental stuff too, and Standing Rock, but really just the kind of core Bernie Sanders economic populism. And I mean, AOC is a fantastic politician. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like her, and I know she causes all kinds of controversies on Fox News and social media and so on and so forth. But if you look at her and, talk to her and see how she ran a race, very shrewdly recognized that New York borough politics is so fixed that it's tough to run a challenge against an incumbent like Joe Crowley, the guy she beat. But if you were organized enough and could get enough people registered to vote, very, very low turnout primaries. And she shocked the world by doing just that. I mean, she had this movement of Justice Democrats behind her. She had this movement of kind of like local socialists, local progressives who believed in her candidacy and were willing to go out and do the work. And, she knocked off the guy that me and everybody in Washington expected to be Nancy Pelosi's successor as the next Democratic House Speaker, and of course wasn't. And then, I tell the story of Ocasio-Cortez's evolution in Washington. Famously came in and kind of occupied Pelosi's office and was very controversial and disliked by a lot of Democrats. Didn't manage to get a lot done, but has really adapted in a way I feel like people haven't paid a lot of attention to. Has learned how to be a very effective congresswoman, both in kind of like hearings and kind of creating these public spectacles that drive news coverage, but even more so legislating and working with the Biden administration. Biden passed like the biggest climate bill America has ever seen, and that was in large part because AOC and her allies were pushing him to do so. It just wasn't touted and advertised as a climate bill. It was advertised as an inflation reduction bill because that's what it needed to do to get through Congress. Right. But AOC's interesting evolution has been that she's recognized that like sometimes you need to kind of strategize and do things behind the scene like that, work with people who, as she has said publicly, Biden wouldn't be her first choice for president, but she recognized that she could achieve a lot of her policy goals if she did so, and she's been very much able to do that.
What will the roles be in the 2024 election for Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, AOC, and others on the left of the Democratic Party? What role will they play in, presumably, at this point, trying to reelect Joe Biden?
It's a great question. I want to answer to start by saying I think the important thing to recognize about all three of those characters is that any of them or all of them could have chosen to run against Joe Biden in 2024. Mm-hmm. And all three of them have chosen not to do that. And I think that a big part of that reason is that they recognize that Joe Biden, to everybody's surprise, the senator from MBNA, has gotten religion in the latter part of his career and has worked to implement a lot of the legislative and policy agenda that progressive Democrats have been pushing him to do. And I think it's a product of kind of our media climate, or maybe our social media climate, or maybe the defenestration of like local news and that sort of thing, that more people haven't kind of gotten the message. Or maybe it's just that, we tend to kind of think about and cover politics these days through the lens of like individual people rather than policies. But like I said earlier, I came up through the lefty policy kind of magazine world. And what politics is really about is like fighting to win legislative achievements that make people's lives better, that improve their lives, that change the world for the better. I think all three of those characters have recognized that even though Joe Biden isn't the guy that they would have wanted to be the Democratic president, he's the one they've got. And they've managed to work with him successfully. And I think they recognize further that if Biden is reelected, they'll be able to do more. It will add credibility to the fact that like the Warren, recovery plan that Joe Biden instituted has gotten all our jobs back in less than 2 years. It's completely different than the great financial crisis. We've got unemployment under 4%. It is easier than ever to get a job in America. Like, is everything great? No, absolutely not. But if Biden gets reelected, I think it will validate a lot of the populist achievements that I write about in the book, and that really owe as much to Bernie, Warren, and AOC as they do to Joe Biden.
Joshua Green is, sorry, let me take that again. I'll edit it out. Joshua Green is a national correspondent for Bloomberg Business Week, and he is the author of The Rebels, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the Struggle for a New American Politics. Joshua, thanks so much for being with us today on Facepalm America.
It was great to be with you.
Thanks so much for listening to the show today. I want to thank Ace Elson and Rosabelle Hine, who are the producers of this program. Please go to facepalmamerica.com for more information about the show. And please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other places where you can do that. It really helps us increase our presence out there. And until next time, enjoy the day.